Hey guys and gals, it's your old buddy Shane Simmons, and I'm not on the road today. Obviously, I am from my luxurious television studio, otherwise known as my kitchen table. You can see my New York Knicks basketball above the TV. It's a single man life, and what can I say? Anyway, I was talking a little bit about the movie Hillbilly Elegy, and I wish I could say I could talk about the book too, but I haven't read it. And there's a reason why I didn't read it. That is because so much negativity and hate basically came out against the book and the author, J.D. Vance. And so I thought, you know what? My life is precious. My time is precious. I'm not going to dedicate the hours that it would take to read this to something that's just going to make me mad and be a poor representation of my lifestyle. So I skipped out on it. And I regret that now. When this movie came out, all this negativity just ramped up again. And I thought, man, this is weird. You know, people, it's one thing to not like something and something to be just almost, like I said, it's almost like a religion of hatred toward this movie and this man. And I thought, man, I got to find this out for myself. So as soon as this thing came out, boing, I'm on there checking this thing out. And I expect to hate it too, honestly, because I've been brainwashed for the last 4 years, you know, and I think it's important to know, you know, why does my opinion matter? It doesn't. I'm just some old boob who runs around with a camera. So take it with a grain of salt. But also, I looked for people who talked about this movie and reviewed it at all that had any kind of platform and had anything good to say about it. And it's very hard to find because they circle the wagons on this kind of stuff, it seems like. So it's not a popular thing to do. So I thought, well, it'd be good to get a different perspective because, well, you'll find out why I feel like that is needed, necessary here later on. But did want to talk a little bit about this movie, a little bit about some of the scenes in it. I probably have to do this in segments because my voice is completely shot. So I can only talk for a few minutes at a time before I get winded and scratchy. So probably have to get some water, and I don't want to look like Marco Rubio reaching over and grabbing a glass every few minutes. So anyway, getting started with this thing. It came out again. Ron Howard directed it. You got Glenn Close plays J.D. Vance's grandmother. You got Amy Adams as his mother, who battles drug addiction, and then you've got a relatively unknown actor playing J.D. Vance at various stages of the life. And so the movie starts off with, I want to talk a little bit about some of the particular scenes that jumped out at me that I really felt like would be worth talking about. And I do want to say that I was pleasantly surprised with the movie, as you'll find out too. So again, if you don't want to hear that, then it's be a good time to just hit the eject button. I hope that you guys know also, I feel like I need to say this, I love Appalachia. I love it, live it, breathe it. Every day of my life, my home address has been in Appalachia, and that's intentionally. I could move away, make a lot more money than I do now. Always could have. I'll never do it. Love it here. This is where family is, where friends is, this is where heart is, and I'm going nowhere. And as long as I can put food on the table for my family in any way, shape, form, or fashion, I will be here. So my heart is here. I hope you know it's in the right place. If you disagree with my opinions, perfectly fine. I like to hear it. I like for somebody to challenge me. I'm one of those people. I've grown a lot over life, and I intend to the rest of my life. I've changed my opinion on a lot of things, and I'm an open-minded dude. I just wanted to give my perspective on this as it is right now. So I'll get started with these scenes in a second, but again, I'm going to cut away, and then you'll see me in just a split second. So before I get into the review itself, I think it's important that I give a little bit about my backstory. And I'm not going to make this about me, but I think it's important that you know where I come from so that you see my perspective, and you know, maybe you either give less or more credibility to what I'm saying. So my family have been in the coal business for 3 generations. My grandfather, my father, and myself. My first job was at a coal mine. I came out in the 1989 Pittston strike. And you talk about jading your perspective. It was, you know, coal mine is always just notoriously unstable. You have these great boom times where everything seems to be going great, and then all of a sudden it could just fall off the rails instantly. And so all that stuff combined and made me think, you know, this probably in the industry I want to be in long term. But I was so glad to have that experience because it's really opened my eyes about, you know, how it's perceived, how it really is. So I went back to college. I did get a degree in business management, went on to work in banking, eventually became a vice president of BB&T Bank. And so I had, I guess it's called Truist now. I had 18 retail branches that I covered in East Tennessee and Southwest Virginia. So I kind of have a perspective that, I've seen both sides of it. I've seen that struggle. I've seen that, just a grind. But I've also tried to get into a more professional industry, and I related to J.D. Vance on a lot of levels with that. And I just want to touch on some of those scenes here. And like I said, I'm, not trying to make it about me, but you can't help but put yourself, when you're watching this, and I assume when you're reading the book, you can't help but kind of put yourself interject yourself into it. I don't know if that's the idea of it, but it definitely made me think about how I related to him or didn't in certain ways. One of the things that jumped out at me early is there was one where he's struggling to pay for college. I think it's going to be like $21,000, and let me stop right here before I get too far away too. This movie is about as obvious as the nose on your face where it's going, so I don't think there's too many spoilers. It's not like you're watching an M. Night Shyamalan movie with some shocking twist at the end. It's kind of know where it's heading. See, as soon as the train pulls out of the station, you know where you're going. But if you don't want to hear anything about any of the scenes, probably don't want to check this out, because I'm going to touch on a few of those. So having said that little disclaimer, I'll get back into it. But there's a scene where he's struggling to pay for college, so he decides to interview for a job with a law firm, and he goes. They have this dinner, and right off the bat, they offer him wines, and he doesn't know which one to choose. Then he sits at the table, and they have the play setting, and he doesn't, all these forks and spoons and knives and everything else, and he doesn't know, how to approach that, and he gets nervous, freaks out, and then he goes out and calls his girlfriend to walk him through it. And man, I related on that on so many levels, because, when you're from Appalachia, it's not exactly the hotbed of mismanners. You don't have a need for that kind of stuff. You don't have the formal dinners. It's just not something that happens in general. I never had one in my life till, when I got into banking, you start to, as you advance, you have to go to these larger cities. Like I go to these dinners in Knoxville or Winston-Salem, and next thing you know, you're sitting at this table, and you have no background in this stuff. So I remember keenly sitting back and watching what everybody else did. It's like, okay, that guy grabbed some bread. Okay, it's probably safe to grab some bread now. So he gets this butter, and he use that fork to do it, and use this knife, and it's just that guy I related on. It was painful in a lot of ways. It was, God, I remember that. I remember that so well. I remember, even first getting in banking, and like I got a 100% polyester suit, and then, I know they're all the same to me. I didn't know anything different. And then as you learn, it's like, oh man, then you start getting paranoid. You start thinking, man, if I got these deficiencies about stuff, what else am I missing out on? And then so you start getting paranoid because you don't have that background that everybody else does. And it just, you kind of ride that fence. And that's why that scene was really powerful to me. I just really related to that, because it's just puts you in an awkward spot. And another one was where he's up there for the interviews, and he gets a call that his mother is OD'd, and so he flashes back and thinks about some scenes of the love, some of the anguish that she put him through, and it's one of those conflicts that goes on with him, and you can just see how the stress of all that just weighs on him, and it's so relatable if you know anybody who's been, and unfortunately I've had it in my family before, and you just see that conflict that you don't know what to do, and you want to be helpful, and you don't know what's helpful, and it's just a tremendous conflict. And then a lot of times it interferes with, if you're trying to advance your career and better yourself, which that's what we all want to do. But also it's like, is that getting in the way of helping other people? Is it, you feel like you're abandoning your family, that type of stuff. And man, it was just that was a strong part of the movie too. So he decides to go back and help her, and so that was one thing. And the mother, like I said, she's played by Amy Adams, and she is one of these people that just tries to be sweet and loving. You can tell that she really loves JD, but she's easily triggered too. And man, you see that so many times with people who have the addiction problem, where they're just wonderful people as long as nothing triggers them. But it doesn't take much to trigger them, and when they do, they just go from 0 to 100. And so I thought, man, that was really, you saw that dynamic in his family, and I thought it did a good job of portraying that. Then it showed too, like she goes through this string of relationships, and eventually becomes pretty obvious that things aren't really like love. It's more of a business decisions. Like, what can this guy give me and my family, and that. And you see that a lot too. God, I've related to seeing people do that. You can see that this relationships makes no sense to anybody, but they get together because, somebody has a place to live, or somebody has, an income, somebody's got whatever, and they get together, and for lack of a better word, they use each other, or one uses the other, and you just see that, and it was like, it was painful, but very relatable. And then you could see her too. I think why she gets triggered so easy too is she gets really bitter about her life's arc. It comes out that she was second in her class out of a class of 400, very intelligent lady, and so her life obviously did not turn out anyway like she'd hoped it would. And a lot of it was consequences of her own bad decisions. But you see that a lot too with people that get into these addictions. They're doing it to get away from pain. They're doing it to try to get these bad thoughts out of their mind. They're doing it to just to numb themselves, to not feel this. But when they do have those moments, that something that pulls them back down, it sets them off, and they get hot-tempered. They get it can be bad, especially when you get to that point in your life where you look and you think, oh man, I've got all these strikes against me. Certain things I thought could or would or should happen to me are not going to happen. And that reality is very hard to deal with, especially for somebody who had a lot of potential and squandered it. You can imagine what somebody like that goes through. And they try to numb their pain with addiction, with medication and that type of thing, and it just spirals out of control sometimes. And that's clearly what happened in this situation. And so at some point she completely comes unglued on JD, and hits them, and then the police come, and he refuses to press charges. And you can see that too. They hesitate for a minute because he's trying to decide what he needs to do. And that's, a lot of times you get in these situations and you think, man, you're trying to be helpful. You're trying to, what is helpful? What is, some people tell you tough love, but that doesn't work always. Some people will tell you, maybe give them another chance. You don't know what to do. You don't know what the right answer is, because when somebody is in the throes of addiction, you don't know how to handle them, and you can't. There's nothing you can do for them. It has to be done for themselves. And so there's a lot of bad, wrong answers about how to handle that kind of stuff. But it's such a conflict when you're dealing with that kind of person. It is, man. And that was very relatable. Like I said, in my family, I had this situation. And again, it's where you straddle that fence. I'd been in Knoxville, and I had a presentation in front of about 100 people. And it went well, and I was proud of myself, and I felt like I had my little big boy pants on, big boy britches, as they say around here. And so I felt all good about myself. And then I got this call. My dad was down here, and there was a flood. He had his commercial building, and it was flooding out. So I drove down there in my suit and tried to help him out with that. And it was just, God, you talk about just a tense situation. The people were mad because their building was flooding, and he's down here trying to scramble it out, and it just seemed hopeless. We were out there just scrubbing around, and then I had a relative who was addicted to drugs who comes in and summons my dad. Just comes, come here, let's talk. And he comes out there and trying to hit him up for money, in the middle of all this. And my dad, God, I love him. He's the greatest man alive. But he, when you're in these tense situations, it's like, God, so he kind of barked about that, and it just touched off. They got in this argument. So I was in about as bad a shape as Dad. I was like, I'm stressed out. This is not a good time to mess with me. So I go out there and confront this person, and we get out here, and next thing you know, he reaches down and grabs a knife out of his sock and comes swinging it at me, and I'm like, are you kidding me? It's like, and so it was about to escalate to sort of pop him, and fortunately it kind of died down, and he went away. But I remember thinking after all that, trying to process, I was like, man, this is a relative of mine who would pull a knife on me and threaten, waved it around as if he would kill me over drugs. And I thought, man, this is so weird that I come, here's a guy, nobody that I work with would ever dreamed in a million years that something like that would happen. But you've got that 1 foot in, 1 foot out. It's like, to advance, you have to work hard. You have to sacrifice. You have to do these things, and people, respect that. But then you also have these conflicts of people that'll drag you down like that. And I remember thinking when I was driving home that night, I was like, man, what a weird life I have. It's just people don't understand. And I know that that's not, I'm not saying that I had some special thing. That's a fairly common from around here. I mean, maybe it's common everywhere, but I'm telling you, in the movie, that really resonated with me. I thought, man, these people, when they get in that zone, they're dangerous to themselves, they're dangerous to other people, and, it's a lot to deal with. So, again, that was another scene that I found be very relatable and powerful. There's a point, too, there's some other things that I thought were kind of good nods to the Appalachian culture, and that was one was there at some point JD's grandfather passes away, and they're driving to the cemetery, and the grandmother and his mother and him are in a car, and they look over, and all these people are standing there, and they take their hats off and put them over their chest and all that stuff and show up honor. And the grandmother says, and I wrote this quote down, is that we're Hill people, we respect our dead. And things like that, I thought, you could tell that really had an impact on JD, and I thought it was good to mention because stuff like that's true. It doesn't happen everywhere. We always talk about how people pull off on the side of the road when a funeral procession's going through, that type of thing. It doesn't happen as much as it used to, but you really love and respect people that show you that kind of respect as for the people who have been deceased. It's just one of the things that is kind of, I guess now uniquely Appalachian, I'm assuming. I don't know that it happens other places, but I thought it was a good thing that he noticed that and they put that in the movie. And at some point down the road too, the one that jumped out, JD, he unloads on his mother. They get into a confrontation at this hospital, and he gets into it with a better addiction, and then comes to find out that she has this backstory too of all these things she witnessed when she was growing up, and how rough her childhood was, and what prompted her to make some of her bad decisions. And I thought that was a pretty powerful thing, because you don't, sometimes you see somebody and you just judge them on what they are at the moment. You don't realize that a lot goes into making anybody what they are. Maybe it's a bad choice, maybe it's a bad luck, maybe it's whatever, but people don't just end up randomly where they're at. Things impact your life, all of us, good and bad. And by the grace of God, I could be right there with them, honestly. I mean, I had access and had hard times that would have led me to go that direction as well. And there was another scene too that's very relatable to me, and it's embarrassing, kind of. He was kind of pressured into peeing in a cup for her. She was trying to get a job, and so his mom was trying to get a job, and so he peed in this cup so she could pass a drug test and get a job at the hospital. And it was so strange, because that while I was working at the bank, someone came by and that I was really close to, and wanted to use my urine to try to get a job. And I was like, how freaking weird is this? I didn't end up doing it. I don't know how I got out of that. But I remember that conflict too, thinking, man, this person needs a chance, and if I can help them, maybe this, because when people are down, a lot of times they don't see hope, and you think, well, what if they got a job and they turn their life around, and this could be the thing that fixes them, and I can help them out. It almost never works out that way, unfortunately, it seems like, but that's what you go through when you're making these decisions, and it's just so tough. And I saw him go through all that too, and it was just very relatable. Then there was a part two. The grandmother she wants to be loving. She's a hard person, and that's very typical in Appalachia of that generation that she came from. Very hard. She's easier to throw criticism or anger out than love and tenderness, and you've seen that a lot. But he gets the best grade in his algebra class, and he comes and brags to her about it, and she's pretty underwhelmed, I guess, to begin with. And so it was, you could see that, but then she walks off and goes and sits down in the living room and still reading it, and you could see just a little touch of pride in her face, and like he had saw that, so it really, meant a lot to him, because he was trying to impress her and make her proud, like we all do. But those people don't give up praise. It's that, they're all about that tough love sometimes. So I thought that was a good scene. And then at the end, near the end, he's talking to his mother, and J.D. Vance is talking about it and says, "I can't stay. I'm not saving anyone here. I have to go." And I thought, wow, that's a pretty powerful line too. It was, you understand that,
especially at that point, he was, I can't remember if he was married or engaged or whatever, but he's trying to carve this life out for himself and his future, and he wasn't going to sacrifice that to stay in a situation where he probably couldn't make a difference anyway. And it really, that's another one of those things was, I thought for me it was pretty powerful. So those are some of the scenes that touched on me. Overall, I really, really liked the movie. I found it was very relatable. It was very human. I, in no way, shape, form, or fashion did I feel like it was an indictment on Appalachia as a whole. I mean, let's be honest here. We have a drug addiction problem, major one. And I wouldn't have a problem if it did. I thought it would, if anything, my criticism would be, I don't know that it was gritty enough about that kind of stuff. I thought it could have been harder hitting than it was. And I know Ron Howard was an intentional choice because he makes things human, and I appreciated that, but he watered it down a tiny bit over what it could have been. And not that that's good or bad, but I felt like, then they were very sensitive. I watched a YouTube interview with J.D. Vance and Ron Howard, and they were both super concerned about making the area and the region look bad, and it came across in the movie. I felt like that probably to a fault. They're not stupid. They read these comments. They see the pushback against this movie, and they took it to heart and tried to change as much as possible. But to me, they may have overcorrected a little bit. I don't know, because I felt like that this is a story that needs to be told. Very relatable, very inspiring, very heartbreaking, just like I said earlier. And it was what a good movie is to me. So all these reviews, I'll get into that here in just a second. My voice is about shot, but I'll be right back because unfortunately politics works its way into this as well. So we'll hear about that in just a second. And I hate to go down this road because anybody that knows me knows, oh my God, I hate politics. I hate it with a purple passion. I can't stand it. I hate both parties. There's major things on both parties' platforms that I completely disagree with. So I feel like I'm a true independent person. I feel like I have a pretty good perspective on that. So, that's why it's painfully obvious to a guy like me that politics is a major reason that there's a lot of criticism of this movie and book. And it's because, when you really look behind the people that have banded together to hate this thing and squash, and it's almost a religion, how bad they hate it. They hate J.D. Vance as a human, almost. They hate this book. They don't want anybody reading it. I've never seen anything like it. And it's that Twitter rage brigade, the cancel culture type people. And I'm telling you, these people are they are leftist at best, but in a lot of cases, they are socialists, neo-Marxist. If you read their Twitter for 5 minutes, it's like these people are extreme left-wing. That doesn't represent Appalachia at all. It's like, how, when you look at the numbers, it was staggering. Like every single county in West Virginia went for Donald Trump, every single one. And I pulled these numbers up. I wasn't surprised. Well, maybe a little surprised. Probably even more so than I thought, because I knew Trump would play well. But for example, I live, like I said, near the southern part of the state of West Virginia. And so Logan County was 80.9% Trump, 17.9% Biden. McDowell County, 78.9% Trump, 20.4% Biden. Mercer, 76.5% Trump, 22.1% Biden. And Mingo, 85.3% Trump, 13.9% Biden. Mingo County. Mingo was where Mate won, Williamson, all these places, they were the heart of coal country, and they were hugely Democratic when the UMWA was a major player. So to see, 85.3%, that's almost 9 out of 10 people went in there and pulled the lever for Donald Trump. That's staggering. You can't get 90% of people to agree that water is wet. And if you don't believe me, go post it on Facebook. Say water is wet and see less than 10 comments. Somebody will disagree. Well, not necessarily. It's just the way humans are. So to think that the Democratic Party has that little appeal in this area is staggering. But what's funny is when you see that, you never hear from none of these people, not one, not a single person I've heard criticize that that has a platform is a Trump supporter, not one. And like I said, I voted for Trump both times. I think it's important that to support coal and a lot of the things that are close to the folks around here. And it's amazing to think that there's no representation. Nobody's speaking about this film or anything else that will admit that you're a pariah in this world. If you admit that, you get that, like I said, that Twitter rage brigade comes after you and tries to cancel your culture. They'll probably lob a Molotov cocktail into my room here, try to burn me out just for even admitting that. But, there's nothing about the National Democratic Party that even tries to appeal to that type of voter. So it's not a surprise at all. But what is surprising is that it's people that are in this extreme minority in this area try to speak on behalf of the whole area. It's like, you're the one that's the misfit as far as whose voice should be heard, but we never hear from the Trump supporter. So I thought it was important that I do this. Even though I got a small platform, I got a platform. Somebody needs to say why and how this happened. So Hillbilly Elegy is, a lot of it is political. It is absolutely, completely political. And what really triggered me to even do this at all was I saw this post that went around, kind of like in the form of a meme, that was saying about alternatives to Hillbilly Elegy, and it showed all these authors and books and all this movies that it suggested as alternatives. And I thought, okay, this is interesting. Let's see what else was on here. So I checked into it. I was like, people we're familiar with are, like I said, they're pretty left-wing. They're socialist, neo-Marxist. They make Che Guevara blush. They're so far left that it's not even funny. And so it's like, how does that represent our area? Why do they want to squash? People need to know who the Trump supporter is. And they try to, in general, people think of the Trump supporter in the Appalachian as some ignorant person who got duped, thinking that coal was going to boom back and take over. And it's like, nobody thought that. Not a single person that I know. They wanted to stop the bleeding in the coal industry. Because a guy like me, I'm 50 years old. I just turned it in October. And, I got a lot of peers that are in that business and their life depends on it. And they're, closer to retirement than the start of their career. And so what do you do? If you lose your job, what do you do? I mean, that's a bad situation. So when you hear someone like Hillary Clinton say a lot of coal miners are going to lose their job, it's terrifying. It's not just offensive. It's terrifying for these people. And I relate to that on so many levels. And, we're not trying to get a boom back in the coal industry. It'd be great if it did, I guess. But, they're just trying to stop the bleeding. It's like, if we can get these guys to retirement age, that would be wonderful. And then whatever happens, happens. But because I don't know anybody that's trying to promote mining for their children. I certainly wouldn't. I don't want my children in it at all. Got it up myself for a very pointed reason. But I also know that a lot of people's livelihoods depend on this. And it's very important for them to have that option. So that's why my number one reason for voting for Trump was that. Got some other reasons too, but like I said, that's the main one for me that I just cannot support Biden or Clinton was the fact that they were absolutely going after the coal industry and viciously, like not even winding it down. It's like they would shut it down tomorrow if they could, and that is a scary thought. And I understand that a lot of people don't agree with that. I understand that, but you're not gonna see me screaming at them and trying to get them canceled and lose their jobs and everything else. It's like, that's your perspective and this is mine. So I think it's important to hear from the Trump supporter, and I think that's why they try to squelch this, because when you look at this list of authors and books that were presented as alternatives, it didn't take long to pick that apart. You think, I really believe too, I think that this movie, if people pulled it back and said, if there was a press release today that said, it's been discovered that J.D. Vance is actually just a pseudonym for Silas House. Next thing you know, this movie would be hailed as the greatest thing since Citizen Kane. It's just, they band together. There's this, you'll see the same old tired names that are just go in circles and they, protect each other. And it's, like I said, they're talented people. They have their perspective and that's fine. But they tend to freeze out anybody else with an alternative voice. They don't want that message out. That's why J.D. Vance hit so hard. And there's a little bit of professional jealousy, let's be honest. This guy's story is not all that uncommon, aside from the fact that he went to Yale. That's pretty daggum uncommon. But, a guy that comes up from that hard scrabble background, goes to the military, pulls himself up and goes through, that happens a lot. There's a lot of people who could tell that story. You don't realize people would be interested in that kind of thing. But, so, here's this guy takes off and has this killer book that, everybody's reading and loving. And there's a lot of professional jealousy about that. So that's where some of this motivation and stuff is coming from. And again, there's some other people. God, this is Elizabeth Cat, whatever her name is. This girl, I tried to read her book, What You're Getting Wrong About Appalachia or whatever, and I was like, I couldn't get 2 pages into it. It's like, this person is just downright hostile. I mean, she's a, and if you look at her Twitter feed, it's it's not your typical 85.3% Appalachian. So, and then again, fine, this is a free country, have whatever opinion you want to, but don't try to squash everybody else's opinion, and don't squash their voice, because it's important to hear from everybody, but I think it's super important to hear from who is this person, who are the people that vote for Trump. They're not ignorant, mouth-breathing idiots like you that like to paint them. And if you want to disparage my intelligence or whatever, come at it. That's fine. I think it's pretty obvious that that's not my intelligence is not the too much of an issue. But anyway, it's just I don't know. What I'm saying is watch this movie yourself with an open mind and know where some of this hate and anger and hostility is coming from, and make your own opinions on this stuff. You don't need anybody telling you if a movie's good or bad or a book's good or bad. I regret tremendously. Now, another reason why I wanted to do this video is I regret, and I apologize to J.D. Vance and the world. I should have read the book. I let this influence me because I thought, man, I ain't got time to waste on something that's going to make me mad. There's nothing about this that made me mad. It made me, it was relatable. It was very much, like I said before, it was inspiring. It was heartbreaking. It was just a lot of things that it captured this life to me, and I've heard from a lot of people who felt the exact same way, and maybe it's the silent majority, I don't know, but actually a lot of people, I got a lot of friends that are Democratic, they vote that way. They're not nearly as left-wing as some of these other people, but they like the book too, and so it's just one of those things that they just form your own opinion, read it, watch the movie. I highly recommend it, and I think it gives you a really good insight into Appalachia. I really do. It's not everybody's life. Nothing is everybody's life. No, but it is absolutely worth watching, and I highly recommend it. And I'm going to shut up finally. Thanks.